unmute people so people can actually hear us. But we are on right now.
Awesome. I actually hated it's really funny. I always tell my students this and they're always so shocked, but I hated homework when I was in
Why
middle
is that
school and high
shocking to
school. I
anybody?
thought homework was the because I'm a
Everybody
professor.
hates
So
homework.
they're always like, "Oh, because right, but I assign
Sure.
homework and then I have high expectations about their
Uh-huh.
performance on the homework and or not their performance, but them actually doing and spending a lot of time
Mm-hmm.
on the homework and like but that's because I then can follow up the I hated homework with, but I learned when I went
Right.
back to school 10 years after I graduated high school that homework is really important to my learning
Right.
process. I can't skate by like I did in high school because some of this stuff is much too complex for me to, be just sort of hearing it once and
Right.
being okay with it. Like I need to
Yeah,
study it.
no, I mean,
So,
I hate homework is a different statement than I don't see the value in homework. I think
right.
you can argue
Yeah.
that there's value. Now, there's a lot of evidence and research that shows that the younger the student is, the less actual value there is in homework. And
Sure.
30 minutes a
Yeah.
night in kindergarten
Absolutely.
is completely inappropriate.
Right.
But teachers do what teachers do sometimes, and it
Hmm.
sucks.
And sometimes parents have to
Uh
step
huh.
in and say, no.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
my my youngest, who at the time had not been diagnosed, but has now diagnosed with ADHD and anxiety, um, used to come home from what is it, kindergarten, maybe first grade, and they would do like, instead of giving you homework every day, it would be on Fridays we're going to send
Hmm.
you home with a short homework packet, and then you can work on it through the whole week and not turn it in until the next Thursday or Friday, whatever it is, right? Not
Right.
him. No, you gave him the homework packet. That was his weekend. It was literally 8 hours a day,
Hmm.
2 days through the weekend. There was no point in waiting till after school because then zero would get done. And he was. It's
Right.
amazing that he doesn't absolutely despise school, because that was just miserable for everybody, especially him. It's. I tell you, it's not much better now. So I mean, there have been weekends this school year where he has
Yeah.
spent 8 hours a day, 2 days of the weekend doing nothing but trying to get caught up on homework.
Yeah, it's like, so for us, they gave it to us on
Mm-hmm.
Monday, and they had told us that it would be later in the year. We were already, because there are a lot of studies, there's some mixture. Some say there's some small positive benefit for someone as young as in a kindergarten. But there are other studies who say, like, particularly if you look at the opportunity
Mm-hmm.
cost of it, that it might actually be better to spend time doing other stuff. And so our teacher does say it's optional, so I want to be clear about that. But at the same time, we get a checklist. We get it on Monday. It's supposed to be turned back in on Friday, and there's like a checklist plus
Uh-huh.
additional worksheets, and it's like the same sort of stuff that he's doing in school. And I'm like, this should be a good time to like work with us on getting dinner on the table,
Right.
or do some Lego projects together, or maybe even use a screwdriver or something like that, put stuff together, things like that he doesn't get a chance to do in school. And what was particularly, I think, frustrating about it is I talked to some of the parents, and some parents are upset about it. Other parents like to pretend that we don't exist. But the answers were, well, then just send him to private school or homeschool him. And I'm like, why? What all I'm saying is in kindergarten, let's like truly make the homework optional. Send the packet home, but don't give us a checklist that I'm supposed to sign or a parent's
Right.
supposed to sign. Uh,
Yeah, how does that does not convey optional at all. That conveys shame when you
Yeah.
don't have
I
everything
mean,
checked off and you can't get a
I
signature,
can see why. I can tell you why she's doing it. I imagine, um, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with trying to enforce it as not optional. I would guess. I don't know her. I haven't met her or whatever.
Oh, I'm
But it
sure.
certainly
I'm
sends that
sure.
message, right?
Mhm.
yeah, and there are other options you could do, right? Like you could have a checklist that we get to fill out, and then we
Sure.
sign it and say we think we've
Mhm.
been, trying to do stuff that's
Right.
good for him. rather than predefine
Yeah.
the activities. And I know part of it's kind of like, why do kids play like Candyland and stuff like that, even though there's no real choices you make in the game? It's because you learn how to play a
Right.
game, and I get that part
Right.
too. But the hard part is I can't have a conversation with them. I can't have a conversation with other parents, and because certain parents will attack you.
Mm.
And then I was basically in the thread called lazy, like potentially like considered potentially lazy and or not caring for what's best for my child
Right.
and things like that by other parents.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
I,
The best advice I got, and best, I'm being sarcastic here, is that, well, why can't you just do it while you're cooking
right.
dinner? Just do it while you're cooking dinner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, maybe I don't cook, and also, why would I try to multitask that much?
And that can be a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I know we're starting off on like
Mm-hmm.
this weird note, but
No. That's life, right? I mean, and I'm not trying to dog the teacher. I'm just saying when there's something that's a checklist, it gives the impression that it's bad if you
Sure.
don't check everything off, right? So even if you're including with the package that this is optional and that, students are at different levels and families interact with each other in different ways and all of that sort of, real stuff, like when you include a checklist, like I understand you need a checklist because you need to know, okay, what is this student doing at home? But I don't know. There's a weird sort of thing going on there with the other parents too. It sounds like so. Who knows? I mean,
I don't know. I am both a former K-12 teacher and a current teacher educator, and there is a lot of me that has the instinct to defend teachers. But at the same time, I also recognize that a lot of teachers do things that they've learned from the people around them and the people that have been doing things a certain way for a long time. And it's not necessarily best practice, but it's got momentum behind it, right? So I recognize that, of course, and as an academic in the field of education, right, I'm all about trying to push new, more effective methods of instruction and what have you, right? That's what my research and my work is all about, right? So I recognize there's places where teachers need to do better, but there's this. It's a weird thing for me because on one hand, like I spend much of my career criticizing teachers. But if other people criticize teachers, I feel this need to jump to their defense, because that's my role,
Yeah.
So yeah.
And here's the hard part. It's like, why can't we just talk about the issue of homework without it being a criticism?
Right. Yeah. And that's the same thing that happens to me when someone just generally, bashes scientists or a certain field of science. And I immediately, like, because of my training, I feel like I need to jump to the defense of that, whatever is being criticized. And at the same time, I spend a lot of my time criticizing others, just exactly what you're saying, Jeff. But I think the reason is that there's this weird thing that happens in humans, right? It's sort of human nature for us to say, okay, well, this is my area of expertise. And so I have learned to be an expert at also critiquing it. And so I'm going to do it fairly, but I don't trust other people who don't know about the actual topic to do it fairly. And so those critiques may be spurious or unsupported, but yet they're often catchy. And so that's what catches on. And that's what needs
And that's
to be
exactly what it
implemented.
is. That's exactly what it is that, these are my people and I was in the field. I was a teacher for a long time and I've done the work to absolutely tear them apart and tell them why they're wrong. But so many people, politicians are particularly bad at this, feel like, well, I was in school for a long time, so I am an education expert. No, you are not an education expert in any way, shape, or form, right? Which is not to say what Tracy's saying is wrong, right? I think homework, especially at younger ages, is particularly tricky and a source of bad practice by a lot of teachers. So I see it and I live it because I have a kid who, like, to this day continues to have massive struggles Like, he gets good grades,
Mm-hmm.
but that's because he puts in unreasonable amounts of work and effort at home. And then the teacher, makes comments about how, did you really work on this? I think you need to put in more effort. No. He is putting in more effort than literally anybody else in the room. You don't understand. So, anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I also think that I think it's okay and fair for a parent to be an
Yes.
expert in their own kid, right? Like, and I feel like sometimes that's like seen as not okay. Like I find it particularly interesting the answer of, well, why don't you just put him in private school then? Like if the public school isn't doing what you want, why don't you put him in private school? Well, number one, that's a financial burden that you shouldn't have to force on somebody if they disagree with a homework assignment. Like that's like so far beyond the reasonable like response, or you know what I
But
mean?
that's
Like,
also, like, that's such a
but
knee-jerk reaction to our political climate right now.
right. It absolutely, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's what I was going to say is, but at the same time, like there's also this sort of prevailing attitude of, well, the government, anything run by the government obviously is going to have flaws because it's going to try to do the most baseline thing for the most number of people. So of course it's not going to fit everybody. So explore other options. Like I understand that as an answer, but I think it's okay for us to expect more from our public
Oh, no,
education system, you know. And I think it should be okay for a parent to question how much homework. Now, I don't think it's okay for a parent, and I'm not saying Tracy did this by any way, shape, or form, but my mom was a public high school teacher for a really long time, and I'm in education, and so I've heard and seen horror stories, right? But I don't think it's right for a parent to march themselves in and threaten the teacher and do all that stuff. And I think the problem is if we automatically assume every teacher is wrong, and then we also automatically assume every parent is going to come in and not really know anything about teaching and want to sort of bully that person, and at the same time the teacher's bullying the student. Like there's this whole weird interaction that sort of gets assumed that I don't think should be assumed. I think I agree with Tracy. Why can't we just have a conversation? Like this should just be, let's have a conversation rather than,
well,
Yeah.
hey, you know,
Well,
yeah.
because like as a for instance, I shared there is a good or bad. It's just a place to start a conversation. There's a good housekeeping article that followed a survey study that looked across different studies around this topic. And one of the reasons I brought it up was that in the article, the parent went and talked to the teacher, and that particular teacher was like, "Hey, it's great. I actually know about this, but it's not me. It's higher. Got to go talk to somebody." So I started a conversation with our teacher just like in that realm, like, "Hey, have you seen these studies?" And the hard part I have there is like the automatic response from the teacher is probably more like what you guys are talking about in terms of well, it's optional. It's like, well, but someday it's not going to be optional, and like, are you sure that you've thought like maybe we should have a conversation because I'm
right.
not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went to the parents group, my question actually had been, is there anyone else, because I'd seen other people complaining about it, it's like, is there anyone else who wants to actually look at some of the literature, like some of the studies and stuff like that, and have a conversation about it, and then perhaps have a conversation with other people at our school about it. And that just like, whew.
This will all be a fantastic topic of conversation for our future podcast, Geeks in Education. I recognize, and I think there's value in our brief sort of pre-recording conversation in terms of recognizing the effect that dealing with our children and their homework struggles has on our and their mental health. That is connected here. But I'm watching all kinds of people on the Twitch stream, like popping in, seeing what we're doing, and then we just kind of keep going and leaving. So maybe we should do the, no, it's fine. I think, but I think it's also almost 9:00, and if we record for too long, I'm gonna be exhausted and fall asleep. So I think it's time to get started.
Let's do it.
Let me hit record on the audio. All right. This episode of the Tome is brought to you by listeners like you. Thanks for supporting us as patrons over at patreon.com/The Tome Show. Welcome to Fit for D&D, the Tome Show's fitness show. It is October of 2021. This is now an every other month check-in show. Please ignore the fact that we haven't recorded since April. Where Tracy, Sam, and I talk about how we're doing with our fitness goals. And then maybe dig into some sort of topic or interview or whatever comes up. Tracy, Sam, how are we doing today?
Tracy?
Okay. Just a little tired.
I think the exhaustion is real. I feel like I've been talking to my students about how we're all just exhausted and at our wits' end, and I told them today, I think what's happened is last year we did that condensed schedule where we started at different times and ended at different times, but went straight through each semester with no breaks whatsoever. And so we've gotten ourselves into that frame of mind. And so now we're on week 6 or 7 or whatever it is, and it feels like it's just going to go forever, and we're only halfway through, and right? And I'm really hoping that in a week and a half, when we have our week-long fall break, that it completely resets things. And then, because once we hit there, it's like 2 weeks on, a break, 2 weeks on, a break.
You get a week for fall break? We get one day.
My kids in the K-12 schools get half a week.
Anyway.
We get a full week, and then come back for 2 weeks, and then it's Thanksgiving, and then come back for 2-3 weeks, and then the semester's over.
Yeah.
So we just got to make it through the next 2 weeks.
We don't get anything.
What'd you say, Tracy?
I said we don't really get anything either, Sam.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a Northeast thing.
Yeah, must be.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, because when I was in North Carolina, we got.
Well, see, our fall break actually was Columbus Day,
Okay.
and they have very smartly decided to no longer refer to it as Columbus Day officially.
Just
now
fall
it's
break.
called fall break.
See, when I was in North Carolina
so.
in grad school, we had a fall break, but the fall break was only 2 days. It was either a Monday, Tuesday, or a Thursday, Friday, so you kind of got a long weekend out of it.
Yeah.
And pretty consistently every semester or every year, it would be 2 days that I didn't have classes anyway, so it had literally zero effect on me. So.
I mean, at Cornell, they did the same thing. It was 1 or 2 days. It was always a Monday and a Tuesday or something like that. But, I mean, I was in grad school, so I was in the lab anyway.
Right.
It didn't matter what the rest of
and
the school
maybe it's a
was
function
doing.
of the fact that I'm in a private school and we can do what we want. So that may be it too.
Could be.
I don't know. In any case, I get you, Tracy. We're all exhausted, and I am dragging today. I really, really did not want to go to the gym today. But I knew we were recording tonight, so I did anyway.
I was so proud of you.
Yeah.
I saw your post.
I mean, I've gotten, well, I guess let's talk about how we're doing, I guess. I think last time, it's hard to remember because we totally haven't recorded our every other month podcast since April. Life just kept happening, and and we kept trying to get ourselves on a schedule where we were going every other month opposite the book club recordings. So technically, I guess this is supposed to be our September recording, but it is October 5th. So here we are. It's close. So I think my goal then was to try to get back into a routine of getting to the gym and exercising more. I had been avoiding the gym for a year and a half because COVID. But once everybody in the family who could be vaccinated was vaccinated, the only one in the family who's not is my youngest, who's low risk, generally anyway. And so I started going back to the gym, and I've been going pretty regularly. My goal is 3 days a week. Sometimes life happens. I got to pick kids up from clubs after school or whatever. And honestly, the last month or so, it's gotten more ragged. It's gotten more once a week or twice a week or whatever. which was all the more reason today when I was exhausted and really didn't want to go, that I kicked myself in the butt and went anyway. It also helps that now that he's in a better routine for it, my oldest son, who's also vaccinated, has been going with me, and that helps keep me accountable. Because like, he's not going to keep me accountable. He's not going to remind me, "Hey, Dad, aren't we supposed to go to the gym today?" But there's the part of me who's like, "Well, he needs to go, and if I'm going to make him go, then I guess I'm going to the gym." So my dad instinct to make him go to the gym has helped me go more often too. So
the dad
Right.
drive is stronger
than the lazy drive,
than the self-preservation one.
Sometimes. So I've been getting to the gym. Fortunately, on top of vaccinations, in the last, I don't know, 4 months, 6 months since Delta really took off, my gym, which is associated with a local hospital system, decided to no longer go mask optional. For a long time, it was mask optional. If you were vaccinated, mask optional. If you weren't vaccinated, you were supposed to be masked, but nobody was checking. So basically, just nobody wore masks.
Right.
But now they've gone to mask required for everybody, because if the doctors and the nurses and whatever are going to be there to exercise, they need it to be a place where they can do that. So,
Right.
so now it's supposed to be everybody's masked, and most people are pretty good about that. There's a handful of people that the one guy that I see every afternoon that I'm there who insists on never wearing his mask properly. And who I've seen behind the counter at the front desk several times, so I think he's even an employee, and refuses to wear his mask, drives me a little crazy, because if anybody should be wearing it, it should be a good example. It should be somebody who works there, but here we are. And I'm not going to say anything, because there's been too many very public sort of conflicts in our society about such simple things as caring about other people. So
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
I have not been weighing myself. I don't know that I've weighed myself since April, and I meant to weigh myself today just to check in for tonight, and I didn't. So I have no idea how my weight's doing. As has been the case for me, I think every time I've worked on my fitness, when I exercise, I feel better. But I usually don't lose weight, and I haven't changed my diet really in the last year at all. My diet's not great, and I don't think I'm probably losing any weight. But I feel stronger. I feel healthier. I know I'm making progress in the gym, because every time I do each exercise, I'm lifting more weight, or I'm doing more reps or whatever. So I know I'm making progress, but I'm not.
Right.
I don't think I'm any smaller. My clothes don't fit better or anything like that. So.
Right.
Which can be a little, I don't know. It's frustrating, but
It's
Yeah.
discouraging. Yeah. Yeah.
it does drive me a little crazy that, like, every now and then I almost never wear khakis. But I went to go put on my khakis a couple weeks ago and discovered, oh, no, that's not going to happen. These don't fit, and I probably haven't worn them in 3 years, and they don't fit anymore. And I guess I need to go buy some new clothes, and that sucks, because that means I'm probably gaining weight, even as I'm trying to exercise more.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have the same problem if I don't weigh myself. It doesn't matter if I tried the not weighing myself thing, right? Because we had talked about, in fact, on one of the other episodes, about it being maybe just I need to shift like the mentality of weight, because weight is
Right.
not the most important thing, right? And so try to shift that away. The problem is that I'm a very I need the concrete like number, I need the reference point. And I don't weigh myself every day, but I weigh myself at least twice a week. Because if I don't have that reference point, and I don't like, if I weigh myself twice a week and for 3 weigh-ins I weigh the exact same thing, like, I know I need to do something, right? I need to do something different. I either need to increase my exercise by 10 minutes, or like, decrease my calorie intake for a few days or increase my water intake. You know what I mean? Like, and just sort of because I'm weighing myself every other day or whatever, I can actually moderate. I feel like smaller
Right.
changes, like changing my exercise by 5 minutes doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But if you do that for 4 days in a row, that's 20 minutes
Mm-hmm.
different for that 4 days. You know what I mean? So, and it ends up making a slight bit of difference. I'm still not on a schedule where I exercise as much as I want to, as often as I want to. Um, but because I'm weighing myself like on a relatively regular basis, I have more of a concrete sort of
Yeah.
idea. I've got a number I put to
Mm-hmm.
something, and um I don't know. It's this weird sort of push pull thing because I do still believe that weight is not like I'm not doing this just
Right.
to lose weight because it's a number, whatever. But like it is also true that my weight is correlated with sleeping better and with feeling overall better and those things. And so if I'm not tracking it and I don't have a number to really like focus on, then I lose track of it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's tricky. We first had, I think it was with David Nett, we had the conversation about not weighing ourselves
Hmm.
so often, and
Yeah.
and part of it because weight is not the beginning or the end of the conversation. It is one of many data points, and it's not even necessarily the most important one, but it's the
Hmm.
one that we fixate on. And
Right.
seeing the lack
Hmm.
of progress can be really disheartening. Like I think I would be more disappointed in myself if I was weighing in and seeing my weight go up or not doing anything
Hmm.
for months on end.
Right.
But I also remember the times that I have successfully lost lots of weight and I was
Hmm.
weighing in regularly, right? I knew how much, I knew,
Hmm.
oh, well, I went up a half a pound in the last couple of days. And so it would motivate me to change my eating behavior to
Hmm.
sort of make up that difference or whatever. So I don't know.
Right.
It could be that I've gone too far the other way and I'm not tracking it enough, and maybe it would be
Hmm.
motivating for me to pay more attention to my weight and to weigh in more often, or try it for a few months and see how it goes, and we'll check in again in
Yeah.
November and see what I
Right.
think then. But
Hmm.
so yeah, so that's sort of where I'm at.
Yeah.
I've also found you were talking about the difficulty of finding time to exercise. Um,
Hmm.
it seemed counterintuitive, but the strategy I ended up finding that worked for me is to exercise on my busiest day.
Hmm.
We were talking before the recording that my teaching schedule is such that I have all of my classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So my original thought was, great, I'm
Hmm.
going to be exhausted on those days. It's a full day. I'm just going
Right.
to exercise on Monday and Wednesday, and then try to get in a Saturday or a Friday day as well.
Hmm.
And it turned out
Right.
no, because those are the days that I'm doing other things. I'm grading, I'm lesson planning, I'm going to meetings, and I end up
Hmm.
working later. Whereas on the Tuesdays and Thursdays, like I'm teaching all day and I'm exhausted, but I also like nobody is worried about I don't have other things scheduled, and so when my classes are over, like I'm
Hmm.
home by 4:30. I have about an hour
Hmm.
to squeeze it in and do it before I come home and make dinner. And that's that works for me. Like it's my busy day anyway. I'm already exhausted. I might as well go and
Hmm.
do this and work out some of my mental exhaustion by physically exerting myself as well. And that has actually been really helpful for me in terms of my schedule, is finding those days that I'm really busy and finding that one time in that day that I can squeeze in exercise, and that just becomes part of my busy
Hmm.
day where I'm just doing stuff the whole time, but part of that is going to the gym.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. I yeah, I wish I could use that strategy, but I teach
right.
5 days a week. um, but yeah, no, I just haven't found a way to work it in. And part of it is still that weird like psychic block of, it wasn't part of my life growing up, so
Mm-hmm.
it just was not it wasn't integral to my day-to-day
Right.
operation, and still that affects me because as soon as I get busy or something happens and I have to refocus and change
Yeah.
some priorities around, it's the thing that
Yeah,
falls
no,
off.
I get that. It wasn't part of my routine growing up either, but I think my predilection towards routine overrides that, right? And so just making it the routine, like unless something is specifically scheduled that late on a Tuesday, Thursday, I just go to the gym because that's the routine I've managed to establish for myself. But you have
Yeah.
to force yourself for the first few weeks to make it a routine. So
Right, for sure. Yeah, I think there's some research somewhere that says something like if you do something the same exact way 18 times, it can become a habit.
okay,
So it takes that few number of times, but it has to be the
well,
same way, right? And it has to be right. It has to be the actual intentional, like habit forming
right,
18 times. It can't just be, oops, I accidentally ended up doing this the same way 18
yep.
times, right? It has to
Yeah,
be,
that's
so.
similar. We started off our with our stream pre-recording talking about education, and that's similar to what is discussed in terms of brain research in the field of education. That you have to do a thing, you have to engage in a routine a certain number of times before it really becomes ingrained. Usually, the number I hear is
Right.
more than 18, anywhere from mid 20s to like 36 ish. And there's also a well-established and studied routine that okay, so you've got the routine, and then there's a formula. After a certain amount of time, you're going to falter. It's going to fall off. You're going to
Right.
backslide, and you have to get through that and continue on, and then eventually you can get to a spot where it's just part of daily life. But I'm hoping that my last few weeks here of not getting 3 days a week, but still forcing myself to go at least once, is my backsliding, and that if I keep plowing through it, then I'll be good. But
Yeah.
my real issue is that life happens, and so who knows? So,
Yep. I know that story.
so which of you wants to talk about how you've been doing in the last 2 months since April?
Tracy seems pretty focused on her art right now.
Oh, it's okay. I can talk, unless you want to.
It's up to you.
So I've been talking about kind of trying to get into routines. Starting early July, I created kind of like a rotation for meals. So I decided that was what I was going to concentrate on. So we have been cooking other than this week, and I don't think it's a backsliding week. It's just that we were not home this past weekend, which is makes it harder to do the meal planning and grocery ordering. We've been eating most of our meals at home, cooking a lot of cool stuff, and that's helped a lot.
You did a lot of that before you moved to New York, didn't you? You did a lot of sort of meal planning and doing unique and fun recipes.
Yeah, definitely the unique and fun recipes part, not so much the meal planning part. I have never been great at it, but what I found was if I just kind of created a series of like a 4-week rotation with different, I call them theme nights. It makes it sound like it's a restaurant, but it's more like it makes it easier to pick because I'm not trying to pick a recipe from thousands of recipes. I'm trying to find, an Instapot recipe or a soup recipe or a Tex-Mex night recipe. It makes it a little easier, at least for me, just the way my brain works.
I want to come have one of your Indian food meals. Those look yummy.
Yeah, because that's like one of my favorite types of food, and it's a little harder to get here now that we've moved. And then the other thing that's helping with the routine a little bit is that my son started school and gets a ride to our house. So he gets home a little earlier. That means I can, I start my job earlier, but I get to end my day earlier. And we can have the routine like about this is when I cook. So when I cook dinner and stuff like that. So my phone has become a series of alarms that tells me this is when I need to start each thing. And that has actually helped as as much as it feels silly to say it.
I've
But
done that with my youngest. For his most recent birthday, he got a what was it? The Garmin Fit Junior Black Panther themed watch. And
oh,
through the
cool.
app that I have on my phone, I can set a bunch of alarms for him and sync it up. And so when, if he's out playing with the neighborhood kids or he's out riding his bike or whatever, there's an alarm that goes off that tells him when it's time to come home. And that alarm just goes off every day, whether he's out or not. So,
Yeah. And I'm hoping eventually, to help my son get stuff like that. It's a little
Sure.
hard at 5, but we're starting to set that routine, which is something that I've never been great at. So hopefully it'll help him see a way to do it. And then what else? That's been a lot of it because the whole summer was I switched roles in my company. So I went from one type of role, more on the engineering side, over to security side. And because I switched roles, of course, for a little while I was doing both. And that was kind of hectic and interesting. And then my mom has been feeling a lot better. But still had to do a bunch of doctor visits and things like that. So it was stressful. And what I found is by being able to shift and do that meal planning more, eating healthier, I could manage the stress better, even if I didn't necessarily have time to work out or have a lot of excess capacity for all the things I would like to do eventually.
you also recently posted a resource that I found very helpful. You posted, I think, on Facebook the How to ADHD video channel on YouTube.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned in the pre-recording bit, one of the sources of much frustration in our family is my son being able to focus and get things done and do homework and all that kind of stuff. And he has ADHD. And I started watching it on my own. I'm like, oh, these are kind of cute and they're fun, and I'm learning some things, and it's confirming, some of it's confirming a little bit of, I wonder if I was, in school today, I imagine I probably would have been diagnosed because I have a lot of these traits that are described or whatever as well. But then I stopped watching it on my own because he wanted to watch it, and so now, and I think it's great for him. Like we watch him, and he's like, and I'm like, okay, so do you see yourself in any of those things? Oh yeah, this, and this. I'm like, oh, but what about this thing? You didn't say that, but I see you in that, And so he's better understanding his own brain and how it works, and I think that's good for his mental health, and by transitive property, I hope will be good for our mental health as well. So there's work to do, but I think it might be a good resource. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome. And it was, even if it's okay to share it, it was great for me because I had actually been diagnosed with, it was hard for them to know for sure. And what they said was, had they tested me when I was a kid, it probably would have been way clearer, but a lot of times some people are able to create a lot of coping mechanisms that help mask it more. But knowing that it's underlying it and thus be able to understand more why the menu planning works for me better and why certain things are helping me that in the past I've really struggled with and that just didn't talk about over the past few months and a year because kind of had to, pandemic, has been really good. And even things like I guess somebody else I saw had talked about the person that does it, and she uses a lot of facial expressions, and it turns out that potentially works a lot better for at least some people who are on that spectrum to be able to engage with the content more and keep track of it.
Do you find that the meal planning and that kind of stuff also helps you make the meals healthier because you're planning them out ahead of time when you're not hungry and it's not in that moment,
Well, and I can be more optimistic. The one thing that has been harder is at the very beginning when I was doing it for the first month or so, I was setting aside time Sunday to cut up the veggies, and that helps a lot. And I just the past month or so has been harder to do that, and I want to get back to it. But once the veggies were all cut up, the meals themselves each night took a lot less time, were a ton healthier. But the big thing was lunch times, because I could basically have a mini salad
Oh,
bar
okay.
on my kitchen counter, make a really good salad for lunch,
Nice.
using some of the leftovers and a lot of stuff. So I want to get back to that part. That's probably like my
Okay.
goal for the next
Yeah, I mean,
few
I
months.
always found I do all the cooking for the family, and I've never liked doing the veggie cutting ahead of time. I don't really hate doing the veggie cutting, and so doing it that night. But it's also I find that what you're getting at the grocery stores aren't always as high quality as you want them to be. And so if I chop up a bunch of bell peppers on Sunday, that by Thursday they're kind of soggy and they've gone soft and they're going bad. Um, but if I do it that night, then it's not as bad. So
Yeah, and I do make sure it's, obviously the first half of the week is good. The other thing we did was we switched from like the large chain supermarkets to, um, it's not a farmer's market, but it's called Adams Fairacre Farms around here. So it's a smaller chain that focuses a lot more on getting
right,
local produce, which I think helps a little bit with the,
yeah,
the thing you're talking about. The thing I want to try next is some of the stuff for like particularly Instapot meals. Um, I can cut up the veggies and freeze them because it's
right.
not really going to change the texture when they get cooked. And then I can just pull it out, and with the meat that and stuff we're putting in, I actually don't even have to defrost
Nice.
it necessarily.
And do you feel better? You've been doing this for a little while again now. Do you feel better because you're doing it?
Yeah, and I can tell the weeks when I don't, when I start straying back to the land of carbs. Uh, and so I can feel the difference. So it's a good motivator for it. Although stress is, and goes back to like the conversation we are having before. The real issue I need to
Okay.
manage stress levels, because the stress drives me to want to eat carbs. So we'll get
Okay.
there eventually.
So when you say you feel different, how does it feel? What's the difference? I'm trying to identify things in my own
Uh,
life because sometimes we have low carb meals, and sometimes I make low carb meals for my wife who doesn't do any carbs or sugar. But for me and the kids tonight, I made ravioli, and that was our meal. So
right. So, and I do have that diabetes type 2
right,
stuff. So when I have a lot of carbs and my blood sugar is higher, I get brain fog. I'll get tired. Uh, Great thing of having, like, you get increased urination and increased thirst. So those are all things you can
right.
feel if you're
Okay,
eating that way.
excellent, cool. Sam, how you doing?
Yeah, so I it's funny. Tracy talks about Adams Fairacre. They carry, so my wife and I, we go to this local farm down in our area, and it's called Bialis Farms or Bialis Farms. And actually, Adams carries some of their produce. And I have to tell you that the best carrots I have ever eaten in my life, and I mean just raw carrot, like out of the ground, rinse it off and eat this thing. It is like the most delicious carrot, the most delicious peas. The farms down there, they're all black dirt farms, so it's really, really high nutrient dirt, and it just tastes amazing. I highly recommend it. So if you see that as something at Adams, I know they carry their produce sometimes, Tracy. I highly recommend uh, choosing them and getting their stuff because it is really, really good, and it's a high nutritional value.
And any of our
Um,
listeners
but yeah,
or viewers in the New York
yeah,
State area.
mhm. Yeah. No, Adams is a great place. We've gone there several times. But so yeah, no, I feel I also have issues with stress levels, and that's where the majority of my sort of bad eating habits come in, because the stress relief is the go to a carb first, right? And I've been I've been doing pretty well with that, for the several months, because I've been very cognizant of it. And even sometimes I basically just say, F it, I'm going to do it anyway, even though I know I should not. But this, it's too much right now, and I just
Hmm.
need to do whatever. And so even just being cognizant of it, of making that actual choice, has stopped me from doing that even more. You know what I mean? Um, So for me, there's a lot of just self knowledge about what's happening and what's going on. And I fully appreciate what you're saying about the watching the ADHD video and whatnot and trying to help your son notice things about himself. And then when there's one that he doesn't notice yet, but you notice and you say, like, that's awesome. That is just awesome. I love that. I applaud both of you for like doing those sorts of things. That's just amazing to me. But also, I can't help but think that has to make your son feel like he's not alone.
Right.
To be able to watch this video and it's about behaviors of a whole lot of people and he identifies with some of them. Like that is you know, there's a lot of bad things the internet has brought to us. And, it's really good to highlight some of the good things the internet has brought to us sometimes. And I have to think that's got to be one of the better things that has been able to happen for a lot of people, because that's just amazing. I just think that's so awesome. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the cool things recently was, I think it was her talking about dopamine reaction from certain types of food. And it was interesting because to me, one of the things is like, I always wish I could just get like a tiny slice of cake, because that's all I really need. Like I get the maximal benefit from that, and everything else after that is just extra calories that I really don't want, but I want to finish the cake because I don't want to waste it. And
Right.
It's because the dopamine comes from the first few bites.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
yeah, the reward cycle kicks in as soon as you take the first bite, and as soon as you've got a couple of bites in and all those carbs hit the stomach and the small intestines, your reward cycle is already going. But I'm like you. Like, I was taught, you clean your plate. If you don't clean your plate, no matter what it started with on it, you're in trouble, right? And that includes any kind of sugary, sweet dessert thing. First of all, if you don't clean your plate, you don't get dessert. And so it's kind of this wicked cycle, right? Dessert's your reward, but then also here's this enormous hunk of cake or this two giant scoops of ice cream for a 10-year-old, right? Like, and you better finish it, because if you don't finish it, next time you won't get any. Right? So
that's how I ended up
wicked...
like this. I was a young kid in like elementary school, and I always grew up with the you gotta clean your plate sort of policy or whatever. And then my dad blew out his knee and couldn't go out and exercise anymore. And for whatever reason, his coping mechanism was a bowl of ice cream every night. And if Dad's eating ice cream every night, if I clean my plate, I got to eat ice cream every night. And I went from this like rail thin, skinny kid to the Jeff you see today, So
right, yeah. Well, when I was younger too, like we didn't have a ton of money. I wouldn't say we were dirt poor, but we were like real close, right? We were the poor of, mom and dad sitting at the kitchen table saying, okay, well, so do we pay the electric bill or do we cut our groceries in half, because we can't do both of those things? So which one are we going to choose this week? And, go look in the cabinet and how much cereal is in there, because if we can do without buying a couple of boxes of cereal, that sort of like, let's negotiate how we're going to actually get through the week. And I had somebody tell me one time I couldn't possibly be poor because I was fat. I was a fat kid, right? Like, I wasn't always fat, but I was really thin, and then, puberty hit and I got fat. And they just couldn't believe, well, if you were poor, you wouldn't have all that food to eat. You'd just be skinny, right? Which is a complete fallacy, right? And in fact, now 40 years later, 30 years later, we see how detrimental cheap food is actually really high in carbs and high in sugar and not filling at all. And that's what the people who don't have as much money, that's what they have to buy so that they can buy enough to feed their family, and then you get this cycle of, whatever. But back then we didn't have that yet, right? There wasn't a huge, enormous like obesity epidemic, and we didn't have at that point yet 40 years of a really messed up
Right.
food pyramid that doesn't really actually follow science, right? It was just the beginnings of it, and it was the space age and everything. Oh, no, science and plastic and everything was wonderful, and the 70s were great, and
Better
then the
living through science.
right, exactly. And so that was, but in any case, so there's sort of all these roots of everything everywhere, right? And just I find that for me, the older I get, the more I sort of try to tease out. And I don't mean sit and psychoanalyze and go, okay, well, here's why this happened here. I mean, like, as I'm making choices about what I'm buying at the grocery store and, making sort of little micro transactions with myself, right? Like, if I go to the store and I decide, oh, well, I need to buy, we still eat bread, so we're going to buy bread. Well, what kind of bread do we buy? Instead of just grabbing any old bread, we get bread that has no high fructose corn
Mm-hmm.
syrup, and bread that's all natural, and bread that doesn't have any, bleached flour, and those sorts of things. Um, so that's what I mean by like little sort of thoughtful decisions about what we're doing, changing a little tiny bit at
Mm-hmm.
a time. And so we've been trying to do that pretty consistently for the past 3 or 4 months, and just really be thoughtful about the stuff that we're buying. And me personally, I've been trying to be thoughtful about my portions, and not as much about what I'm eating at first as how much I'm eating. And then it got to where it was okay now, and what am I
Mm-hmm.
eating, right? And so trying to sort of shift that, and I've been doing really well. I've lost about 12 or 14 pounds in the past couple of months, which is really good. So that's partly the like tracking my food better, and then also exercising more. And it's funny, Jeff, that you mentioned that when you exercise, you end up not losing the weight. Because at first I wasn't losing the
Mm-hmm.
weight either, because I was exercising. So of course, when you exercise, you start retaining water a little bit because your body's trying to figure out, wait, what are you doing? Do I need this water
Right.
for whatever? But then you're losing water because you're sweating, and so your body gets all messed up for a little while. But then you're building muscle, and you need all the nutrients that you're taking in to
Right.
build all the new tissue. So you don't doesn't look like you're losing anything, but your body is
Right.
changing, right? Like you're. And so I had a little bit of that too, and then eventually that ends up stopping, and I end up starting to lose the weight. And so, and I
I've
went and
gone I've gone years of
I looked at my
consistently exercising and never had significant weight loss from
and
it.
never yeah, and
Yeah.
everybody's different. Like there's not, I'm just saying for me, like that sort of thing happens at the beginning, and then it ends up, and then I'll hit a plateau, and it'll happen like that again for a while, and then it'll fall off again. But I went back and I looked at my Lose It account, and the last time that I had like put in a weight goal for Lose It was in like 2017, and I'm actually down 24 pounds from that
Okay.
moment.
Nice.
So that was like 5 years ago, right? But still, or 4 years ago. But to think about that for a second, I'm like, okay, and well, 12 of that is just for the past 2 months. That means that, who knows when the other 12 was, but like, obviously I can maintain
Mm-hmm.
something, right? So that actually felt kind of interesting to me, because I was like, I hadn't really thought about that account for a while. And so then I started like really paying attention to my food again in the past month. And it was like, oh, wow, I actually have really done some things. So as much as the changes are slow and steady, the fact that they're slow and steady means that eventually it is making
Right.
a difference. So, but my biggest thing right now is just stress relief, because I still have issues with trying to deal with stress and having different responses to stress,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to figure out things. And it's a very stressful time just in the world in general right now. We still have pandemic issues, people. Like, this is not we didn't suddenly snap our fingers and
Right.
everything went away. Like, we're still in pandemic
It
weird
is
brain
arguably
thing.
worse now than it was
And
last time we talked in April. So.
yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. And so, and probably there will be a third variant, right? Because there was COVID-19, then there's Delta. There's probably going to be a third one.
Sure.
This thing, they've noticed that there's this sort of weird 2-month cycle thing where it gets bad and there's a huge outbreak, and then it kind of declines a little bit, and then it gets bad again, but it's on a weird 2 or 3 month cycle. So, it might be a little bit calmer for the next month, but then if another variant shows up that's extremely, contagious and gets transmitted extremely easily, it'll have another spike like
Mm-hmm.
Delta did. So, we're not out of the woods. And all that means, though, is that we're still just living in this weird, like, boiling point of stress, and so, then I've also got all the normal things everybody else has as well. My mom came to visit, and, I've got work stress, and there's, different pandemic related stressors. There's stress with my immediate family and my wife. And, there's just, it's real life stuff. Right. And so that's really where my issue is right now, is that sort of stress, this maintaining appropriate stress levels and trying to find stress relief is the hardest thing for me right now. So, and really all that means is it's putting the whole package together, right? Like, this isn't really just about losing weight. This is about all the different techniques around losing weight and fitness and stress relief and living a life and being able to maintain a nice geeky hobby like
Mm-hmm.
playing D&D and other RPGs, and also being able to maintain our familial relationships and our
Mm-hmm.
family health and our work life balance, and just all of that sort of thing is just it
Oh
sometimes
yeah.
is too much. It's
You know,
just too
when
much.
I did was I when I was in grad school, which lasted forever.
Mhm.
Um, I had to make sacrifices. You can't live the life you were living before and also get a PhD, right? And unfortunately, the
Mhm.
reality is the thing that I sacrificed, the things that I sacrificed, the two things I sacrificed was time with my wife and my health. Right, I had to cancel my gym membership because I didn't have time to go
Mhm.
anymore. And my goal, my hope was, okay, well, let's get through this. Let's get a job. Let's get things back on track then. And that was,
Right.
this is my third year out of grad school, and so I'm back to getting to the
Yep.
gym regularly, and I was before the pandemic too, but the pandemic hasn't helped, and I haven't really long term put in the effort in terms of my eating. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're making
Yeah, I hear
progress,
you.
though. I was going to
Yeah.
ask, when you said that you've been trying to make these small sort of incremental changes with portion sizes
Mhm.
and the selections you're making at the grocery store and whatever, I was going to follow up with you. Okay, but are you noticing a difference? Does it seem to actually matter? But you've lost 12 pounds, and you know,
Yeah. I mean, it matters to a point, but there's a certain, there's a thing about being a mammal, right? And the thing about losing weight is not just calories in, calories out, right? Like, it's really not that easy of an equation. I know that's like a popular, like, oh, well, whatever you put in, you got to burn,
mm,
like, that's true from a linear mathematical perspective. But there's a lot more to weight loss than that. And there's a lot more to bodily health than that. And so there is a thing. So what I was going to say was, the thing about being a mammal is that the paradox is, the more you exercise, the more you want to eat, because the more you burn, the more your body tells you need to bring in to maintain your body, right? Because whatever you're at right now, your brain is busy trying to keep you at wherever you are, right? Like, that's part of how your body
mm-hmm,
works. And so at some level, if you start reducing your calorie intake so that you can lose weight, you lose weight, but then at some point you can't just eat less and less and less and still lose weight. You have to also change your activity level, and you have to find the right combination, because if you don't, you can't just eat 500 calories a day in perpetuity for the
mm-hmm,
rest of your life and survive. Like,
right.
that doesn't work, right? So there's this weird combination of finding the right exact amount of, like, calories and types of food, and then finding the right amount of exercise. And the reason why I say it's weird or difficult or hard is because it's not the same every day. Like, there's no real formula for it, right? Because it depends on what your work schedule is like, what your family stress level is, whether the holidays are coming up, things like that, where it makes a difference, right? Like, what events are coming up? Well, if you know that there's a big family shindig coming up, you have to change your life around and figure out how you're going to eat and exercise throughout that event or during that event to make it work, and that might not be the same as what you would do on a regular day. And so that's part of what I'm so yes, I feel different. To answer your question, I feel there's a difference, but feel like I haven't really found the right sort of balance day to day. I feel like part of that weight loss is just kind of luck. You know what I mean? Like, so because I made enough changes that built up enough to have me lose that weight, but part of that's just lucky, that I hit on that right combo for enough days in a row to lose, if
No,
that
I
makes
get you.
sense, right? Like, I feel like, yeah, it's not real. I'm not quite there yet.
But
So
it's progress, and
I feel
you're.
it, but I don't know how
I
sustainable.
mean, you're on the right track, and that's not nothing. I
Yeah.
think give yourself credit for that. I think.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Well, and that's the thing. That's the thing. That's one of the stress relief things, right? Is give yourself a break and give yourself credit for the
Yeah.
things you are doing right. Um, Rather than just beating the hell out of yourself for stuff that maybe you made a mistake, or maybe you just didn't pay attention to something one day, or there's, I mean, that's a stress thing too.
Right.
So,
Not right on. Well, and I
but
think
yeah.
you previewed what our next recording is going to be about. Because the next time we record, it should be right in between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So I suspect it'll once
Holidays.
again, like
Yeah.
it has been in the past, it'll be a conversation about holiday
Right.
survival. So,
Yeah. Probably.
well,
I mean, it's a hard time of the
should we
year.
set our
So,
goals for next time? What we're going to try to do for next time, and see how we do.
sure.
Sure.
You want me to go? So I have two goals. I want to lose another 5 pounds a month. So 10 more pounds between now and the next recording, because we're going to record
Which
in
will
two
be right
months.
after
So,
Thanksgiving.
yeah, yes, at some point around there, right? So I mean, it's a goal, right? And I still have I want to keep getting better at because majority of my cardiovascular exercise is stationary biking still, and so I want to keep like increasing the timing of that and the intensity of it, right? Because I don't always ride it at the highest intensity. I sort of take a
Sure.
leisurely pace a lot of the time, just because I'm tired or whatever. So, like, I want to try to get on a more even keel with that and keep increasing my
I tell you,
abilities there. So,
intensity.
yeah, so
You see the fitness pictures that James Incasso posts on Twitter, and maybe he's
mhm.
just a particularly one of those people that just sweats a lot, right? But man, it looks like every single work,out he is working
Mhm.
harder on every workout than I
Yeah,
do for a whole month. So,
yeah,
just based on sweat
yeah,
levels, anyway. I don't know.
right.
Tracy, what are your goals for the next couple months?
I'm trying to figure that out. I think I want to keep uh, cooking and doing the
Mm-hmm.
healthy thing, like
You
eating more
gonna set
veggies.
yourself
I'd
a
rather put
lunch
it that
salad
way.
bar? Start doing that again?
Yeah, yeah, and then try to do more art again. Like maybe try to do like I am doing tonight. It doesn't have to be. It could be a coloring book, but maybe half the days. Try to make sure I
Do a
do
little
something like
something,
that
yeah.
for the stress relief. I want to add exercise in there, but I don't know if my schedule can. I don't think we've gotten the routine down enough where I
Uh-huh.
can
Mhm.
commit to that.
Yep, I get that.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, me too,
my
for
my
sure.
goals are I mean I want to maintain my going to the gym. I'm hoping that this is my backsliding, and if I set that goal to really maintain the 3 times a week, when at all possible, then I
Hmm.
think that would be good for me. Like, I'm not going to get in a Saturday workout this week because I'm going to Chicago because my wife's running the Chicago Marathon. So, um,
Yeah.
but I'll maybe be walking all over Chicago watching her run. So that'll be good. Um, and then the other thing I'm going to try doing that you actually inspired, Sam. Despite our conversation with David Nett, who absolutely was right, I think, in everything that he said, I think I might need the extra motivation of that number. and checking in more often. And so I'm going to try weighing in about once a week, maybe twice a week at most. I don't want to obsess over it, or in the way that David was kind of warning us of. But I think having that number will help me sort of make those small decisions about portion control and that kind of stuff, which I think is really where I need to go for my eating, is the portion control piece. But I don't know. I'm hoping that if I start doing the weigh-in more regularly, that will help me be naturally inclined towards working on portion control, and then I can talk about eating and set some goals for that next time we talk. So those are my 2 goals. Keep up at the gym and weigh in at least once a week. So. Okay, so I think, unless anybody else has anything they want to talk about, that is the end of our discussion for this month. Yeah, okay. So if any of our listeners want to chat with us or have questions, you can find the show on Facebook. You can find the show on Twitter as well. It is at The Tome Show. You can email thetomeshow@gmail.com. You can also join the Discord. It is permanently linked in the Twitter bio, and it is otherwise available if you reach out at any of those other places, and I can send you the link. And we have our own D&D fitness channel there. It stays fairly active of people, various listeners, and myself and some other folks pop in every now and then and talk about how we're doing on fitness and whatever. And then you can reach each of us individually on Twitter. I am at Squatch, Squach. Tracy?
At Sarah Dark Magic. Sarah with an
And
H.
Sam? Are you muted?
I was muted. I said at DM Samuel with no H.
With no H, very good. Unless you're Sean Connery, then you're DM Samuel, right?
Right. Samuel. Yes, Samuel.
Excellent. All right. So that is where we are with our fitness quest for today. Please come along and join us as we continue to build up our geekiness and our health. And definitely every other month. We're not going to allow ourselves, the whole point is it's a check-in show, and we're holding ourselves and each other accountable. And it's hard to do that when we only talk, twice a year. So getting back to every other month. We were doing monthly. We're going to do every other month now because it's hard to squeeze it in our recording schedule. So, all right. That's it. The end. Let me stop the audio. Oh, do we draw paint a narwhal?
Narwhals are awesome. I love them.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's a coloring book, but it has a heavier paper, so
Nice.
I can use the watercolor.
Does it have the paints attached to it?
There are paints attached. I use
Nice.
my own.
Very good. Well, should we say goodbye to the folks in the stream? We've had people there with us the whole time. Bye, folks. Thanks for joining us. It's been fun.